All right, everybody, it is Trial Tuesday once again. Today we're talking about an important special election for South Carolina's 1st Congressional District. That's coming up later this year. Now, this morning, this election is going to fill Tim Scott's former seat. Attorney David Aylor, a guy who doesn't make the laws, but he sure knows them, is here with the ins and outs of that upcoming election. Counselor, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we've been covering this for a long time since Tim Scott got that nod, and 19 candidates can be squaring off for this seat.
Exactly. Are you running?
I'm not running.
Okay.
No. I couldn't give up my job on the desk.
That's
How about you?
You know, I thought about it, but no, that's a lot of work. It's too much.
Yeah, you'll get there one day, I'm sure. Well, tell me about it. We know all the candidates that are there. There's about 16 Republicans, 3 Democrats vying for this seat. And it's going to be a really big special election because there's 2 important dates tonight.
Right. The first date is the primary date, which is March 19th, which makes the race pretty interesting because, you know, the actual election time that you could sign up ended just January 28th. So you're talking about a very, very short primary for a congressional seat. And then on that date in March, which is the 19th, either side, whether it be the Democrat or Republican, somebody has to get 50% or more of the votes. If that doesn't happen, then it pushes off into a runoff election, which would be April 2nd. And at that point, just 2 people. That would be the first 2 that are closest to that 50%.
Why do you think there's been so much interest in this seat this year?
Well, I think it's just a unique seat in that, it came up really out of nowhere. I think it was a shock for most, including most South Carolinians and even political insiders. And then once that happened, a lot of people, I feel like, think that, the door was opening. Maybe it was a time that they could get in there. And once you get that seat, if you start representing the state and doing a lot of positive things, it's something you can really hold on to. Yeah,
it seems like a lot of attorneys are actually running for this seat. I want to ask you, an attorney yourself, what's kind of the draw on that? Just because you already know the law and you know how it works?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with that. Obviously, with a legal background, there's so much of law involved in politics as a whole, making the laws and then following them, different things like that. So I think there's that natural draw there. Also, a lot of the candidates, are attorneys that have their own practices, so they're somewhat flexible in that if, in fact, they were elected, they'd be able to move from that, into Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to talk about some of the political advertisements that we're already seeing. A lot of the yard signs are already out. Are there any legal implications to doing that anytime early, and do you think it really affects voters?
Well, at this point, obviously, they're within the primary, so they're going to be able to put the yard signs up wherever they're allowed within those city ordinances. Some cities allow them at this point. Some wait until, a couple weeks out from the election. Whether or not it does anything for you, I think at this point, some people are really just trying to get name recognition. There's so many candidates, it's hard to really, be picked out of the bunch unless you're one of the more popular ones that we're familiar with.
Exactly. With those television spots, do you think right now it's kind of some of the bigger dogs in the race trying to get their name out there so they can eliminate some of those lesser competitors?
Right. With the short period of time that you have for the primary and then the actual election in and of itself, you're going to see as much TV as possible. This isn't a race that people are going to be able to do a lot of door-to-door, really even call banks for that matter, simply because of the amount of time and the amount of space that has to be covered.
Right. Let's also go over the Voter ID Act, because this is going to be the first election here in Charleston, Dorchester, Berkeley County that are going to have those new voter ID laws in effect when people go to the polls.
Right. You're going to see a lot of directions about that. Obviously, they've had one smaller election here in the rural area that's gone through the voter ID process, but this will be the first big election, so that should be interesting as well, just people getting used to that, making sure that they understand the policies. And I imagine you'll see a lot of public service announcements as we get closer to the date.
But definitely you want to make sure that you bring a couple of forms of IDs whenever you head to the polls.
Absolutely. You don't want to wait in that line and not be able to vote.
Very true. Attorney David Aylor, I'll be your vice president any day when you decide to run, my friend.
Let's do it.
All right. We're right back with much more Lowcountry Live after the break, so stay with us.